Hello, good evening, welcome to Flory Models. Here we are for our little bit of a pre-show before we get going tonight. Hopefully we're all okay. If you usual thing guys, if you can let me know you can hear me okay, if it needs to go up, if it needs to go down with the sounds and everything else like that, would be absolutely fantastic. If you can tell me in the live chat, that's even better because I've got you right up in front of me there. So good evening Daniel, Harold, Jason, Jerome, John, Renee and Neil who are in there already, nice and early. Evening guys. So yeah, if you can let me know if the sound is okay and we're coming through okay, that would be brilliant. I think we are, seems to be all right down there. Anyway, it is pretty warm in here. In fact, I can't see my temperature gauge over there, but it was a balmy 37 degrees in here earlier, and I was like, yeah, it's going to be fun tonight. Thank you, Renee. Absolutely fantastic. As long as the sound's all right, we'll be good. So, drink. We're going to need plenty of this. Get the old still out. Thank you, Jerome. Good evening to you all. It's amazing, this country. It rains, it's wet, it's windy, and then we get a bit of sun, and it's absolutely killer. In fact, our little thermostat out the back, we've got a cupboard area and all the rest of it. It was actually showing in the shade around there 37 degrees today because it's a little bit of a sun trap. So it's there, then the sun moves around and it just stays hot. It's the house, it's the brickwork. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jason. How is it in Toronto? Are you getting loads of storms over there at the moment? You wait, we'll have them next week. They'll make their way over here. What have we got? About 7 minutes to run. Goody goody. So tonight we're going to be basically looking at metalwork. So our little new Buster, mini Buster, son of Buster, we're going to do metalwork. So we're going to do half in acrylic, half in, to be honest, my favourite one, extreme metals. I have got alclads and all the rest of it, but I think in this heat it's really going to struggle. So I thought we'd just play safe with what we've got for the moment, but it should be a lot of fun. Neil says, sound is good, even if I know the answer to turned aluminium question for well-worn aircraft. Feeling knowledgeable for the first time on here. Right, I think we're all good. Everything seems to be fine down there. Just whip around the cameras, make sure they're all running and working and in. Yep, that's good. Just checking the other one. That's good. We're all up in there. Everyone's piling in now, so good evening to everybody. So Neil, you're saying about the turned aluminium question. Was I right about they just put the swirl pattern on the outside to give it a decorative effect, or is that something I missed? I assumed that's how it was done. It's rained almost every day here for the last week. Yeah, that's pretty much what happens here with intermittent sun tonight. We might get a bit jaundice effect, and I'll be honest with you, I've got both windows open down there and I've got the door open behind me. We've got the patio door thing, slidey door, that's opened as well, so I'm trying to get a bit of air through here. It's not so bad now I've got those open, I must admit. Any updates, new sounders? To be honest, we are still waiting for them all to come in. We've got a few, but it's very limited at the moment, so there's no point actually doing it. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, they should be here mid next week. I have been told they'll be to us by Thursday by the latest, because a lot of you know we're going to Riyadh Friday through Monday, so we won't be here Friday or Monday, although I'm going to do something live from whilst we're there. But so anyway, the company's assured me we will get them before, so I'm hoping that'll be it. As soon as they're done, what we'll do is we've already got, to be honest, images and everything set up on the main site, just needs to go live, but I don't want to do the pre-order thing and everything else like that, so I thought it'd be better to wait, and then as soon as they're here they can go out that day. But obviously, because it's going to be members only for the moment, whatever quantities we do get in, when we get the full allocation start to come through, then we'll start to let it go out and we'll get them out. But by the end of next week they should all be here. Early part of next week they'll all be up for sale and all the rest of it. But say we are away through Friday morning, we're going to leave here, or Friday midday, and then we'll be back hopefully around about Monday afternoon, early afternoon, so we'll be doing something like that. The Wings has a tip about it here. Right, I'll have to have a look at that separate there, Neil, because obviously I don't go anywhere when it's running and streaming and everything else, otherwise we'll get into loads of trouble. Right, okay, so everyone's in, so let me just make sure we're okay on the main one in here as well. Let me just turn that off. That one's going good, that's fantastic. For once we're all working really, really well. Again, the other thing as well, don't forget guys, I've turned the frame rate down. Normally we stream at 60 frames, which is massively different down below because I've got like settings of what things are running at and all the rest of it. System's only running at 13% on the core, and the graphics are only running at 4%, which is good, whereas normally it's quite a lot higher, but we turned down the frame rate and it looks like we can get away with it. You should get a smoother, non-stuttery type of appearance because it's half the frame rate versus double, but as long as you guys are all okay with it, that is fine with me. So, what have we got? 5 minutes. Yes, I agree, Daniel. We should have a tutorial from Neil then on how to do swirly patterns on aluminium finishes. Go on, Neil, hit me up. Just a quick version. How do you do it? What is the tip? 30 frames is a bit jerky. Right, okay, hold on. I can do this on the fly, I think. If this goes horrendously wrong, I do apologise to everybody. No, I can't change it on the fly. It won't allow us to go up and down all in one. It should technically be slightly less jerky because some people, it struggles with doing 60. Robert saying video quality is good. Hello to everybody tonight. Everyone's piling through the door now. That's it. Come in, take a seat. Make sure you've got a cold drink. You're going to need one. You wait, we'll start this and then the wind will drop and I'll get no breeze at all and I'll be here sweating. I even considered getting these both running to draw air through because it does work. So if you have both of them running, the blinds will start doing this as it's sucking air through. But we're right, it'll be good. Just as the sun slowly moves around, I get it in the face and I'll get even hotter. Okay, so he's saying, so Phil, the way they do the turned aluminium is to use aluminium as the base coat and then do some chrome with a fine brush in the swirls on it. God, that seems technical. It looks like the motion of blurring like watching F1 on the plasma TV. Right, okay. What we'll do is in a moment then I will drop this code, we'll flick it up to 60. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will go off air very, very briefly and then we'll come back and do the proper show, and what I'll do is I'll up it because we know everything's working fine, so I'll just turn the frame rate right up to 60 again and we'll be good to go. Good evening everybody. Actually I won't do that because if I do that I'm going to lose the link and I haven't got time to go around and do all the links. But never mind, we'll stick with it for this show, it'll be fine, and then from now on I'll go back up to 60. It's just the computer is running so much quieter, not getting anywhere as hot when it's not having to work as hard. So that's the other thing, it won't start whirring. You know what it's like when it gets going, it gets noisy. Right, 2 minutes everybody. Alright Neil, well, Neil, keep it for this way for this week, and then when we do next week, we will then change it. I'll go back to 60 as standard. Because otherwise what happens is I've got to go around and then I have to leg it round there and change all the links for everything, and everybody have to re-come in, and it'll be a right pain because you'll get people saying, when's he on? And he is on. So, just making sure I have got everything that we're going to need here. Thinners, airbrush cleaner, lacquers, that'll be good. Hydration. Yeah, could do that, Neil. When it's definitely cooler. I must admit, the computer is absolutely fine. It's the one upstairs still having trouble with. I must admit, I did clone the solid state drive off the one upstairs because I thought that was what was fault. I had a fault with it, and it's still not right. So that computer's going to have to go. I'm going to have a new one. Okay, good evening everybody. So we've got Alexandra, Andrew, Archie, Daniel, Harold, Jason, Jerome, John, Matt, we've got Renee, Robert, Stefan, Lutz, Neil, Robbie, Steve, yeah, Sizz Bob. Text me up, poke it in there, how would you like it pronounced, and we'll do that one. It's just, it's coming up as, because I've got a small screen, I've got it partitioned across, so it's not coming up as the full one. Right, okay. Let me just mop my sweating brow. I'm going to get a lot of this tonight, so if you lose my hands off air, that's what I'm doing. Okay. Right, what we're going to do, guys, is the usual thing, although I always forget to edit this off, because it's quite fun anyway. But what we're going to do, we're just going to put starting soon up here, and we'll get going then, guys. Okay. no problem, Simon. Got you. Oh, cut us off again. I'll get it right one day. Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to Basic Airbrushing number 6 live. It is rather warm in here, so apologies if everything gets a little bit hot and everything else. Today we're going to be talking basically about natural metal finishes, right? So 2 ways of thinking about it. You've either got acrylic or your hot type products, your lacquers. Now you'll often hear me a lot of the time saying things like the acrylics are, you know, the way to go because they're friendly and eco-friendly and they're a lot nicer to use. Okay, now I'm using a lot of MRP paint, admittedly, that's slightly going out the window if I'm honest, but when it comes to lacquers and things like that, for using it in natural metal finishes, they have been the way to go. The thing is with it is, the pigment count can be very, very fine, and to be honest, with natural metal finishes, it is all about the pigment count, okay? The thing is, if the pigment count is a little bit sort of low, as in the big pigments, it gets that gritty, grainy look, and that very sort of, you know, the way I describe it is like, aluminium, Tamiya XF16 aluminium is quite a gritty looking colour. It's got a very heavy pigment. Even Tamiya Chrome is XF11 is quite a heavy pigment, not exactly brilliant. But that said, in the around about late 90s, early 2000s, Games Workshop paints really nailed it on the head, and they were coming out with some beautiful finishes. Great, but they were very, very thick. You had to thin them quite heavily. It could be done, don't get me wrong, and I did it lots of times, but really they're designed for hand painting, and that's what they are very, very good at. Though last 5 years we have seen everybody sort of stick their hat in the ring about this, from all the major brand manufacturers trying to come up with new things. So the first one really was obviously, you've got your Alclads. Staple for years and years and years. They were the metal ones to go for. They just gave the best effects, they had the best sort of color range, and to be honest, they were pretty straightforward to using it once you knew how to use it, i.e. lower air pressure, nice and close, and sort of I wouldn't say light coat, but a more of a dusty type, laying it down, bringing it up quite slowly. You could get some very, very nice effects from it, almost to chrome. Okay, then that was about it. But then everybody else really got involved with it. Next up, from my point of view, the bigger ones that come along that work, okay, was Extreme Metals from AK Interactive. Yes, they had a hell of a start because their paints were manufactured incorrectly. They're very thick, they didn't seem to work, it seemed to be some people getting them to work. The reason is that they had a faulty batch, a lot. When we say a faulty batch, I think it was a complete run, which were no good. They just had the wrong consistency, they were sticking together, they were gloopy, they just wouldn't work or anything else. They fixed that problem, and as far as I'm concerned, they fixed it very well. Okay, now they are my sort of go-to grab and paint type of metal finishes. Pretty much idiot proof. The great thing with these is they can be put down quite heavily and they're very forgiving, and you can go very light and they're very forgiving. It doesn't matter if you're very close or you're very far away, it just seems to work with this. So they're probably the easiest natural metal finish paint you can physically use. But it is still technically an enamel based paint. Okay, so from that point of view, it's still one of the hot products. If you want to go down the road, you know, of acrylic, the next one that came along was Vallejo. Now, Vallejo actually did a true acrylic version of it, which, to be honest, technically doesn't work. This stuff actually does. It's very, very thin, but you've got to know how to use this stuff. If you put it down too heavily, you get what I call the sand mark, so you get sort of tide marks in the surface of your metal, like dark and light. It can be quite grainy in appearance. You can have all types of problems with it. Once you get to use this stuff and you get a little bit of knowledge about using it, which hopefully we'll do tonight, you can actually pull off pretty much exactly what you'll get from something like AK as well. It takes a little bit more work. It's not just a shoot and go and all the rest of it, but it will give you something in that ballpark, and very much a true acrylic as well. This has got no real nasties in it or anything else like that, so you can thin it if you wanted to with waters and all stuff if you ever wanted to, but you don't need to. But the big thing is, with all natural metal finishes, it's all about the surface, okay? Preparation. Your paintwork is going to be your canvas for everything that's going to happen when you're using the natural metal finishes. Now the thing is with this is that when you're actually starting out and you're putting it down, you're thinking that's fine, it's no problem at all, we'll just put it down, it's smooth. trust me, any imperfections in your paintwork will stand out like a bomb, literally on here. It only takes a little bit of dust, a little bit of fleck in there, a stray hair, a little fingerprint, a glue mark, whatever. It will make it look massive, especially when you use washes and things like that, because this stuff is very, very thin by its nature, so it will show everything. Some paints you can put down a little bit heavier and get rid of them. We spoke about it with different types of primers, things like that. Definitely metallizers, you have got no option. One of the things a lot of us use is obviously a gloss finish put down first, black ideally, okay? Black doesn't have to be the color to use for all metal finishes, but if you're using things like chrome, high polished silvers, things like that, the black will reflect the color a little bit more. Not so much necessary with the darker shades, especially when you're in dark grays and gunmetals, doesn't make any difference, okay? The reason a lot of us use gloss black though is because when you look at it, you can see any fault. And that way it will give you a good representation of what's going to happen when your actual paint comes along. So the thing is, anytime you're using a natural metal finish, really just think about your surface, what you're going onto. All those little things you're thinking, well, it's a little bit rough there, but it'll be fine. Honestly, it won't be, because it's going to show up and it's just going to get worse all the way through your build from now on, okay? So you need it to be pretty much perfect and smooth and everything. And when we say smooth, it's almost to a gloss type touch finish, okay? That way everything lays flat, because just think of it like flakes, okay? Metal paints are not round balls, okay? They are literally layers, a tiny, tiny little thin flakes. What happens is, if these flakes are nice and it's flat, they lay on top of each other like this, you're going to get a beautiful finish, okay? Almost like a chrome finish to it, no problem at all, it'll work. The thing is, the bit where they start going down and they're at 45 degrees or 90 degrees and doing this, it's then just going to go to pot, because what's going to happen is they're not laying naturally, they're not stacking on top of each other, you're going to end up with a bad finish, and that's when you get gritty texture, as in the look of it, not so much the feel of it. It can be silky smooth, but it looks like you've got dark, it's like looking at sand, okay? It's just got that grittiness in the actual texture of the paint. So again, it's all about preparation, all right? And this is the thing with it. Think of it as just being, all that work is going to be preparation. If you get that down, putting the actual metal coats on and everything else like that are going to be absolutely straightforward and no problem at all. If you've got a problem though to start with, it's just going to get worse all the way through. And I can't sort of reiterate that enough, because it is so important when you're doing it. So, are we all good in the chat, everybody? So I was talking to obviously a lot of you earlier. We've got a bit of a full house now, including Simon. I'll pronounce it right now, and everybody else. Again, if you want to shout out any questions at all, please drop them into the live chat. If you've got a more sort of technical question, something else like that, please pop it down actually onto the forum, and I'll read them out as we get near to the end and we make our way through with that one. As always, from all of these ones, we're going to be using my standard 2 airbrushes. So down here we've actually got my Infinities. One's a CR Plus, although they're both now retrofitted. They're both CR Pluses, okay? So as in they've got the Teflon filters and the three-way seal systems and everything else, okay? The one with the stripe on at the back here, this is one I use for acrylic. The one without is what I use for my lacquers. I'm lucky, I've got 2 airbrushes. That's what I tend to do, all right? So for this one, we'll be using it actually for doing all the sort of Vallejo type stuff. For this guy down in here, we'll be using it for doing the more sort of AK type things, or any other hot ones we decide to have a go at through the evening. Both of these airbrushes are exactly the same fit inside, okay? So from those points of view, they've both got the 0.2mm needle set in there and everything else, okay? So they'll be identical throughout the entire pool. If you are new and you haven't seen this particular build we've been working on, we've used this guy for the last sort of 5 episodes, or 6 tonight, for doing all this work. Under here, originally I was going to do it black, but because it is so hot in here and all the rest of it, I don't think we were going to get away with it, okay? So I'm actually going to go straight on top of this and we'll go through, but this has actually got primer and it's been painted, but it is a beautiful smooth finish and I'm quite happy with it. It's not going to be as good as a gloss, okay, but it's going to be close enough for what we need to do tonight and everything else. Again, this is just the basics thing. We'll move on in later shows as we make our way through to sort of more intermediate stuff and more advanced ways of doing it, when you start playing around with metal colours, different finishes and stuff like that to give better metal effects. This is purely this evening about getting this stuff down and working for you, and then showing you differences between colours and masking it and all those things like that. So from our point of view, what we're going to do is we will start with the actual this stuff. Now I've got a couple of the bottles of these out. These are my sort of go-to colours for actually using the Vallejo range. Now, to be honest, I don't believe you need to go out and buy every single colour, so what I tend to do is I just get the sort of the major ones that I think I'm going to be using most of the time. So down in here we've got two of those for some reason. Let me just get rid of that one. We've got dark aluminium. Okay, it's a very nice colour. It is what you expect as a dark aluminium. We've got the dural aluminium, which has that slight buff colour to it, I suppose you'd call it. And we've got a darker colour down here. We've got the magnesium. Now the big thing you can see at the bottom, you can see how this is separating. Again, these paints, like all paints we've done throughout this entire series, all need to be mixed really heavy. Good little shot of it there. You can see how it's laying funny. Okay, and it certainly needs a good shake to wake these things up. So I don't know if these have, some of them have. These have actually got in here M5 nuts and various things down in here. What is that? That's the magnesium, that's the dark. Some of them haven't. So what I'm going to do is stick a few in. Okay, so to be honest, as we've done with all of these are just marine grade stainless steel M5 bolts, as you can see just down in here. The thing is, you've got to use marine grade. This stops them physically from rusting or going funny, shall we say, in your paint, okay, and stuff like that. So by just popping a few of these in, some companies will sell you agitators and balls and various things for doing this, but honestly, that one's got one in. That one's got one in. Okay, we're all good now. Alright, but the thing is, they don't really need it. It's really just for acrylics as well. You don't really need these with the lacquers. They tend to break up, and the enamel based ones and stuff like that, they tend to break up pretty good. But with all of these, they do need to be woken up to get that pigment moving around in there, get them all going and everything else like that. So we just put that down to mix it. So what we're going to do with this particular one, we're going to do half with acrylic and we're going to do half with the AK on him, alright? And in that way we can see the differences between the two and the different sort of colours and effects we get with it and all those things, okay? So what we're going to do is, we've got the, we'll start with this one here. This here is going to be the dural aluminium. I don't know if you actually pronounce that correct, but that's how I do it, okay? So just down on here, we're just going to move that out the way for one. This is our acrylic one. So with them all, like we've done right the way through, first of all we're just going to put a little bit of thinners through this. So this is, just as we're doing with all of these, just airbrush thinner, okay, which is the Vallejo stuff. Okay, and we're going to blow it down here. So we're just checking, one, we can't see anything down on the paper towel like we've done with all the others. Secondly, that it's physically coming out okay. Alright, the other thing we want to check is that, and I'm just scraped it off the nib there, is that we don't have any build up on the needle top and bottom. And obviously these pinch ones are great, but they can get a little bit of build up just on the nib, just on the two prongs, and the thing is that will affect your spray pattern. So ideally, I suppose I should be doing it correctly, what I'm going to do, just pull the needle out so we've got this protected. But it's this end guard. If you can get it off, fair enough, but if it's like mine, it's probably on there forever now. And what we're going to do is just on these ends, is just physically hook them off. You could obviously use proper tools and do it properly, but we're just zipping along here. So whilst the needle's out, we just give it a little bit of a clean. Now the other thing as well, because it's metallizer finishes and stuff like that, if you do take a little bit of towel, just place the needle on there and drag it backwards and turn it and spin it. And you're feeling if there's any drag. If you've suddenly got some drag and you hear it ripping, you've got a bent needle and you can actually sand it off and done it. We showed you on some other shows, but with metal finishes, it's really important to make sure everything's working as good as it can. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with funny paint patterns and spattering and stuff like that. It could be something as simple as your needle. Again, when you're using metal finishes, the trouble that you can have is that everything is magnified, okay? Anything is going to give you a small problem normally will be a big problem when you're doing this stuff, okay? So we're just going to wipe this off. I don't like using the snap top lids. Reasons are, one is when you undo it, they flick at you. Secondly, you can get a lot of dry build up and all this stuff. You can see it around on here. It's pretty nasty. Any of those dry bits get down into your airbrush, like we said about through all of this, it can be a real problem, okay? So what I like to do is unscrew it and we'll just decant a little bit out. But again, you can get a good idea of actually the paint finish by what's happening down on here. When it's covering well and it self-levels, you should be absolutely fine in it, just like that, okay? Now for this, because we're just going to go in and we know it's clean and everything else, we're going to tip this straight in because we're not physically mixing the paint or anything else like that. It's just going to go in neat. Okay, so again, we're just going to pour it very slowly. Okay, we're not going to need tons and tons and tons of this stuff. It should all go in quite nicely. And to be honest, I have ordered the little Mac valve that is designed for these airbrushes, and I've also ordered a new colour cup lid because I've lost mine. I have got my other one here, which isn't the one for this one, but it's enough. Okay, so usual thing, we're going to check our flow. Immediately pulled the trigger. I got loads come out. That's it. Hardly had to touch it. Very thin, this stuff. Okay, so we're just finding how much pull and just getting a feel for it. We're listening to the paint as well, same as we've done with all the other paints we use. We're listening to see if it's actually crackling, if there's a funny noise, if you can hear something that just doesn't sound right, okay? If it's sounding just like the air coming out, then we know we're good. The hiss will get louder, but that's all, okay? So what we're going to do is, for the moment, we're going to do down the port side on this guy. What we do, we will try and save somewhat of the matte, okay? So down in here, what we're going to do is we're just going to coat this entire wing. All right, so from our point of view, airflow very high, you can hear it sort of rattling. So again, we're just going to ease it back, check our flow. That's good. All right, so what we're going to do is just very lightly put down a nice dusty type of coat just to put down for the moment. And as you can see, in one pass it's covering. This stuff covers extremely well. We don't really have a problem with coverers and everything else like that, okay? So again, this is just one pass, and then we're going to go back over, and as you can see it's going down in there and where it's drying and going. All right, so looking at it, it's just a little bit textured at the moment. All right, so what we need to do is put down just a little bit more. So we're going to knock our air pressure back a little bit so we can hardly hear it, but we're going to move in a little bit closer. Okay, so now we can get right in amongst it all, so we can just come in and go right. Okay, and very gently we're going to build this guy up, and as you can hear, you can hardly hear the spray, but you can see it's got a lot more going down. But what it is, it's going down wet, it's giving it all time to self-level and to sort itself out and everything else like that. So we're just going to do this leading edge of this wing. Okay, just getting that real well. Okay, so we just cut to air, we're just going to dry down. And you can see how quickly and easily that covers. Okay, and that's done as fast as that. Okay, now the camera always plays havoc when you're doing metallizer work, purely because it's hundreds of LEDs up there and they're all slightly offset, so it tends to catch things at slightly different angles. But hopefully you can see it's just starting to go down there quite nicely. Okay, just running in, no problems at all with that. And from my point of view, as you look at it on the off camera over here, comes over, when you look at it like that, or hopefully you can see it like that, you can't see that graining, because the thing is, say it's the camera and it picks it up in weird lights, but to the naked eye it looks like just a solid sheet of aluminium. Okay, it goes down there really, really nicely. Now the thing is, when you sort of overdo it a little bit, so if we just show you down on here, if we up our air pressure just a little bit, okay, and we're just going to come in and we're just going to blow this quite heavily over the wing now. We can just build on what we've got. Okay, and then again you'll see it looks extremely wet and gritty, but just give it a couple of minutes, it will dry, it will begin to self-level, it will sort itself all out and everything else like that. And again, we haven't gone over gloss or black or anything else. I'm going to do it artificially. I've just got air and we're just going to dry this guy down. Okay, and it begins to dry down, it suddenly starts to get a lot more shiny. And this is because everything's sort of lying down and doing its bit and everything else like that. And again, if I switch to the bigger camera out to go for an overall effect, you can see how it's got a, I move it slowly, trying to pick up the difference in thing. You can see how it's not as heavy from this angle. You know, pretty straightforward on that. And then when you look at it from a distance and overall, it's pretty good. You don't have any issues with it. I catch it through the light. It is just down on there. So it's just laying down that solid one of it. Once you've got a proper coat down, you can then start to up the ante with it a little bit and put it down quite heavily. Downside to this stuff is, don't forget, it's not like an enamel or anything else. You can't actually physically handle it because that's going to be wet for a considerable amount of time, depending on how many thicknesses of coat you've put down. And in it, again, it's the trouble with acrylics. If it's lacquers and things, you can handle them almost immediately. Okay, so from that point of view, it's pretty straightforward. Jan says, what should I use after priming when doing metal paints? The primer is matte, has a texture. If you're going to go, it's like we said at the beginning, technically you should be going over a gloss finish for the best possible finish you've got. Okay, because again, it is that thing, what shows through. If it's a flat finish, you're going to get it to come off. This technically, although it's flat, it's because we've weathered it, is pretty much more like a satin finish and stuff like that. And like I said at the beginning, it is that thing. If you were going to be going for a chrome look or a high polished metal, you need gloss. If you're going for darker colours and you want a more sort of natural aluminium finish, then actually a gloss isn't necessary. You can get away with just using a satin finish or a very smooth paint finish, because it's not as important for everything to lay down as flat as you make the way through and stuff like that. Okay, how about masking acrylics? What, is in the paint or the actual masking in general? You can mask over this stuff, no problem at all, once it's completely dry. But again, you're going to be using the back of the hand technique to actually get all of those out and everything else like that. Right, if we just switch colours, I can show you a couple of things. See, we've got a good old dollop left down in here. You hardly use any as well. That is the nice thing with this one. Okay, so if we just take this one out, okay, we'll decant this guy back in. We'll do a quick flush, colour flush. Yeah, I'm not so much about using textures, using a clear just as a gloss. I prefer to use a proper paint. So personally, from my point of view, like we said, I would use Tamiya X1 for if you're going to go for a gloss finish. But if you're going for any type of metal finish, you want satin. So you could go in there in theory and just put a clear coat right over it and do it that way if you wanted to do it. But yeah, definitely, if you want to go for that real pucker glossy gloss finish, then yeah, you're going to need obviously a very glossy finish, just to make everything smooth and reflective. So just think of it like doing normal gloss paint. Put down your gloss paint and you'll be good to go. Right, I'll just do a quick blow through with this one. Okay, excuse the camera playing up tonight. I don't know quite why it keeps turning itself on and off. Even that colour cut feels warm. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll switch colours. Alright, so in here we're going to come in with the magnesium to show you the differences from one to the other, and a couple of little techniques you can do with this one, being a sort of basic one. Okay, so straight down here you can see this is a lot darker. Okay, so this guy, again, pouring very slowly, and again, you're not going to need loads. That's the beauty with this stuff. Alright. Pop our little lid on here. Again, check our flow. You can see straight away it's a lot darker colour. Okay, so again, backing that air pressure down so it's at a workable amount. Okay. So you can probably hear we're hardly using any sort of spraying pressures at all. That's what we can use. So what we're going to do, we're going to do this one down the back. Camera. There we go. So down in here we're going to pop it over the black, which as we know is like a satin type black as well. So again, straight away, very light. You can see just how quick and easy that covers. It doesn't take anything at all to cover this. Okay, so again, that's just one little dainty pass. Okay, so we just come up again and we're just going to pop it down in here, and then we're just going to back it up. Okay, and then again, we're just going to come down. And again, we'll just draw off that tailplane. Okay, so there we go. As you can see, totally different colour to what we were doing under there. It's a lot darker, as you can see, and you can poke it straight up on the back. And if I do a little bit just down between the two when we unmask it, okay. But always with this stuff, it's light, it's dusty, it's building it up nice and slowly. You don't want to be in that thing of suddenly put down a heavy bit. If you put down a heavy bit, what happens is you're just going to end up with a patch. You can put down a heavy coat, but if you're going to put down a heavy coat like there, make sure it's all heavy. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to end up with patches. So what we've done is we've really flooded that on there to show that actually when this dries back and everything else, it should come back quite nicely. But if you over flood, you're going to get the tide mark, which we probably are going to get in there, so it's going to need another coat in a moment, but we can show you. But down in this midsection we've got darkness now, and what that is actually because the pigments are now collapsing on top of each other and just really stacking up, so it's not coming in very good. So what I'm going to do is dry it down, then I can show you. And then what we can do, sometimes they level out. That's the thing, when this stuff dries it can actually put itself right. But if you do a little area, it doesn't like it very much, and then you do a heavy area, and sometimes you can get away with it. It's a little bit funky how this stuff works, and blow me, it's going to go back and it's going to level itself out, but there we go. Okay. So we'll just dry that down, and there we go. It actually leveled itself out, which was, I didn't think it would, but that graininess went. But that's what we're saying. If you do everything all together, then you'll be absolutely fine with it. Okay, you're not going to have that situation of having the sand mark in there. But if you do a little bit in an area, and then obviously you're going to get stuck with it and all the rest of it. Okay, so from that point of view, that's the effect you're going to go with it and everything else, just like that. Okay. So Simon says, I tried the Tamiya X1, sorry, I've not tried the Tamiya X1 before, but I did a test with Mr. Colour Black GX and those results were perfect. Shiny, but not a good base for painting metallics. I use MRP, Surface Primer Black, was not as nice. Again, it is that thing, it's all to do with what you're looking for. A bit dull, don't forget, this is a really dark colour. This is dark magnesium. So it will be dark, it's not going to be like these over here. And the other thing as well, you have to sort of forgive the camera, because the camera overcompensates for anything shiny, so it tries to dull it out. Good example there, you can see this here, this is the same colour as this. The tail and the fuselage are the same, but say you catch it in different angles and lights, that's how it's actually performing. Okay, but that was sprayed, this is the same as this. There is no difference, okay? Phil, when do you use a gloss black primer Or do you use it all the time? No, I tend to use gloss black if I'm going to do anything where perhaps it's got a little bit of problem with the paintwork, i.e. I've got lots of filling and sanding and stuff like that. You can put it down just to make sure everything's looking good. If it's a generally okay kit though, you could just use a satin and get away with it like that. You have no real problems with it at all. Okay. But what we'll do is we'll switch out the colours for the final bit of the underside, and you can see them all working together. Okay, but as I say, black, gloss black isn't the necessary, you know, the be all and end all. It has to be, and people say it has to, and that's rubbish. You can get away with it. Depends what you want. If you want metal, as in high-speed aluminium and polished look and everything else like that, that's slightly different to what we're doing here. Today we're just putting down metal colours in the basic form of it. If we wanted to do gloss and high speed, what we'd have to do is physically gloss the part, make sure that that's all fine and it's all good, and then we'd have to come in and obviously go through the stages of building it up very slowly and everything else. This is more of a basic thing. I'm just putting down metal finishes and being able to spray some of these. So if we use the Dural aluminium and we'll do the body with it, and this way afterwards what we're going to do is unmask all of this, and hopefully you'll be able to see the differences between them all. Okay, so just down in here, this actually is one of my favourite colours of theirs. It's actually not a bad colour at all. Okay, so what we're going to do, we'll check our flow, happy again as always. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down the body of this guy now. Nice and light, just building through. Don't be flooding in there and anything else. As I say, it only takes a pass, 1 or 2 passes, and you've covered it. The rest of it is just going to be adding more depth to it. Okay, we'll just take this off down the toe. And again, it's just that thing of lightly building up all those layers. Now this one, as you see, is a lot more of a shiny colour compared to the other ones we've done. Okay, it's actually one of my favourites for doing anything sort of metally and all the rest of it like that. But again, when you're using metal, you know, I know the holy grail is probably for a lot of you out there to have this polished chrome looking thing. Well, the reality is things aren't like that. The reality is that, you know, you might get a Showbird which is a chrome finish, but that's the only time you're really going to see it. You're not really going to see it if it's like day-to-day type stuff, or definitely stuff that's in surface. It's always going to have that sort of more of a natural metal finish than just being chromed or highly polished to an inch of its life. Okay, so that's those done there. So you can see that dark magnesium at the back. We've got the wing, and now we've got the actual body part itself. And again, this is where the camera plays havoc with it because it tries to compensate for metals. But again, on the bigger one, you can probably see it a lot nicer down on there like that. Okay. And this is now starting to dry back on this wing quite nicely. So if you wanted to, now you could probably get in here and mask up and go through some motion. So we're going to have a go at that with acrylics, just so we can show the differences between all the types. Grab some tape. What have I done with my tape? I had it earlier. Okay, so usual thing, masking. Always detack it to an inch of its life. Okay, so with this stuff, it's Tamiya, it's going to be good. So luckily I'm hot and sweaty today, so we can just back of the hand. Okay, just like that. And then what we're going to do is we can pick out a panel. So because we've detacked that entire area, what we'll do is we'll pick out this guy down in here. We're just going to put this on. Okay, just a cuff each side. And again, back of the hand, detack it all off. So literally where it won't stick to your hand, you know it's still going to stick to your model, you'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so we'll just stick it on here. And we'll stick it down in here. And then again, this colour isn't a million miles away from what's down there, but it should give us a different shade. Okay, just dry that down a little bit. And then what I wouldn't do is leave the tape on there too long. I tend to pull the tape off pretty much as soon as I've done that part. And then that way, hopefully you can see that little panel. I don't know how well it's going to show. Again, from my eyes, looking at it, it's fine. But there we go. You can see how that panel is different. And then you'll go through the motions of doing all the different panels that way. But again, camera tends to artificially do these. Okay, and that is literally as easy as that is for just down on these side parts and stuff like that. Again, it's one of those things, you're finding the colour that works best for you. The last one I'm going to do is grab a bottle of it. Here's this is actually the aluminium, and the reason I wanted to use this one is because this is, as far as I'm concerned, a little bit too strong. It's too shiny. It's almost artificial. And when we say artificial, it's just too shiny, I think, for the scale effect and everything else like that. So, you know, that's the trouble with it. Sometimes you can think, yeah, okay, and you always think aluminium is the right colour to go for, but sometimes I find aluminium just a little bit, just too much. Clean out with these is pretty straightforward. It's just your standard as you would do any of the others. Okay, so getting in contact with all of these. Okay, so John says, has anyone tried Tamiya AS12 as a primer for the base coat? I haven't. Phil, are you going to talk about weathering metal coats, smoke and heat effects? Not on this one. This is more, just as I said, it's just for the basics. I just want to get the guys used to painting this stuff and putting it down. As we do other things, then yes, we obviously talk about smoke, heat changes, heat blurs on these things, and everything else like that. So, as we can see down in here, this guy, can you tone the metallics the same way as you did last week with normal aircraft acrylic paint? You can a bit, but you would mix them with other acrylics. So you do exactly the same fashion, but if you wanted to lighten the colour a little bit, you could do it with this, which is something we're going to show in a moment. And if you wanted to darken it, you could then just mix in a little magnesium, because don't forget, all of these metal colours are all interchangeable as well. They can all be mixed together to make up any sort of shade or tint or hue you actually want with any of the colours, okay? So it is exactly the same process for all the weathering stages on these things, okay? So what we'll do, we're just going to pick this. So this is aluminium. So what we're going to do is, I think, I'll tell you what, let's do the tail again, and we'll show it in this colour because it is very dark, that one. So what we're going to do, we're happy with how that actually is. Let me just change camera. Alright, so that was looking there, so let's give it a really shiny. Okay, I'm just going to put down a nice coat, and let's just put it right down the back of this. So I'm actually putting down quite a heavy, tight coat, quite a high air pressure, just to show that this is quite versatile. Okay, with all your metals. So if we dry this guy down again, so there we go. You can see on this one that difference in the metal. But don't forget, you're never going to get Alclad or the ones out of this. It's not going to give you that type of effect, okay? For talking about the weathering and stuff like that, you can come in here and with a little bit of finite control, you can mottle in undersides of wings and various things, just as like we did last week with this one. If I just grab a couple of these just to wedge it. Okay, so again, we'll check our flow. Happy we've got a good flow. So what we're going to do is just pick out centres panels, and you can weather and fade in a particular way. But the thing is, you don't want to overdo it, because if you come in too much, what can happen is, as I say, tonight we are drying on the nib a little bit, purely because of the temperature in here. We get a little bit of build up, so we just wipe off the nib. Okay. These areas, and you can slightly change them around, but again, because it's metal, it's so difficult to show metallics on cameras, because cameras just, they get blinded by it, you see. Okay, so that's that one down on there like that. All right, so that is doing it with acrylics and various things. It's very straightforward. Preparation, airflow, everything we did before, and you're happy. But the thing is, with all metallics, they cover incredibly quick. You don't have to worry about it too much, like you do in other things. It's not like you're actually putting down normal paint. This will cover instantly in one. Don't forget also with this, you can't thin it. You can't make it thinner so you don't see it as much. The pigment is the pigment. You're not actually changing that at all. It's going to go on no matter what, okay? So from that point of view, you do have to be a little bit careful what you're going with it. The other big thing as well to talk about is overspray with metallizers. Metallizers, they go airborne, they travel forever. So really you want to, if you can, mask your entire model, even if you're doing a small part, because otherwise what can happen is you're just in that situation where it's going to get a tiny little bit onto your paintwork where you didn't want it, and then next thing you know, you're going to have loads and loads of trouble, because you've got that metal in there. You've got to go back, you've got to touch it in, you've got to try and cover it, and everything else like that. Where were we? Eric says, evening Phil, how are the AK and Valeros react to handling? Again, all the metallizers are going to be a little bit prone to handling and everything else like that, purely because we said about before, they're extremely thin. They're not very thick. There's no substantial thing to them, so they can be damaged, worn through really easy, or anything else like that. It doesn't take too long at all before you make a complete mess with them. Okay, so like all painting and everything else, if you can, you know, cover it or mask it or whatever you want to do. That's the bonus with these acrylic. You spill it, you just wipe it away, and it's no problem at all. Okay, now if that has been other ones, you're in a bit of trouble with it and all the rest of it. Can you change the tone of metallic one same way as you did last week? Yes, you can, but you have to mix them together, and then you can obviously come out with different shades and tones, no problem at all. Phil, should any special care be taken with decaling acrylic metallics? Again, once they're down, and because they lay very smooth and nice, you can actually get away with not using a clear coat over the top if you don't want to. Normally, because metallics are so nice and they fit very good, you can put them straight onto it and roll them out, and then sometimes you don't even need to seal them either. They'll bed down so nicely because of it's on a good prepared surface. The only thing you want to watch for is obviously using setting solutions and stuff like that, because that can attack then the metal finish. So in some ways you probably do want to protect it as best as you can. But I'm a great believer in some of these metallic and metal finishes and stuff like that. They're so nice that it seems if you overcoat them, and let's face it, if you put down clear and your air pressure is a little bit high, you get more of a satin look, you're going to get a satin metal finish, and you're going to lose that metal hue to it and all the rest of it. So down with our other ones, we were saying about this, let's try something a little bit more polished. So down here we got the AK stuff. Okay, this is the extreme metal series. Okay, these are a little bit funky because they're not like a true hot lacquer. The easiest way, if you smell them, you'll notice actually these are more like enamel based than actually a proper lacquer and all those things. Now, because it's enamel and all the rest of it, I'm going to put lacquer thinners in my airbrush, just a little bit of it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to coat the inside of the colour cup, make sure there's nothing in there and everything else. Okay, we're going to tip that and blow. Okay, now these are uber thin, okay? So again, your air pressure, right from the get-go, you want to almost nothing, because it's not going to need much at all. Now normally I squirt these out, but I'm out of pipettes, funnily enough, so we're going to have to tip. But think of these like alclads, they're very thin. They make a mess very quickly. Okay, pop the lid on. Okay. Okay, so this time we're going to go off on the other wing and we're going to see exactly what we get. So check our airflow. You can see immediately we're a lot less air. You can probably hardly hear this, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're just going to come over with one pass. Nice and straightforward. Okay. The weird thing with this is as it dries, it self-levels. So when you first put it down, it looks pretty awful, and then by the time you get a couple of coats onto this, it actually will self-level itself out. And again, it's a little bit weird how it does it, but many a times when I first started using this, I thought, okay, well, what's the thing? Well, you know, it's nothing particularly brilliant like this, but actually, if we watch this start to dry off, it dries beautifully. Okay, and it sort of has a real luster that comes out. See, to start with, this is quite grainy, but give it a few moments, it'll actually start to come to life as this stuff dries off. Because I'll be honest with you, that first time I did it as a live sort of review, I wasn't impressed at all. I was putting it down thinking, well, this is no good. And then actually, give it a little bit of time, this stuff really comes to life and has a real sort of natural, vibrant look to itself. Okay. Daniel, disclaimer, Flory Models does not recommend that you sniff the paint unless you have run out of booze. Absolutely. Okay, so down on here, what we're going to do is just dry this down. Okay, you can hear hardly any air pressure with this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just going to up our air pressure just a little bit more, and we're just going to give it a slightly heavier coat. Okay, so from this time what we're going to do is just going to come in. Okay, and this is the nice thing with this, because if you watch, we're going to put down quite a heavy coat at high air pressure. I'm going to blow this right over, and technically you can't do this with normal paint because it doesn't like it. Remember we were saying about low air pressure letting itself. This stuff actually works slightly different because this is just air now. I'm going to dry this down to speed this up. It actually prefers a little bit of air pressure. It tends to give a slightly nicer finish at a medium air pressure versus a low air pressure. Okay, so there we go, that's on that wing now. It's taken in. If we just move out to the other one, you can do a direct comparison. Okay, and as you can see, really, consider we've messed around with this one over here a little bit, you can see it's not too much difference between the two. So really, acrylics and the actual, you know, these are enamel based, pretty much on par with each other. No problem at all with those. They work really nicely on that. Okay, and then the thing is, if you want to push it just a little bit more, if we do the rest of it, what I'm going to do is going to cut in. Alright, so we're just going to do down on the nose here. This nose is horrible, by the way, disclaimer, but we'll just show how quick and how easy it is. See, I think we're out of paint. Okay. Alright, and there we go. Very nicely done indeed. Okay, very simple, easy paint to use at any time. Okay, so if we come in with something else like the steel, okay, the steel's quite a dark colour. stainless steel, wherever it is, it's actually really nice. Okay, again, this stuff, it takes quite a bit to wake this up and get it going. Do you have any plans to seal the metallic paint? If so, the Johnson's floor polish any good for this job? As long as, we were saying, it is done as a gloss, putting it down as a gloss. If you put it down as a, you know, something a little bit more, then you're going to have problems, because it's just going to give you a more of a satin finishing and lose your metal effect. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to sort of just lightly post shade with this. Okay, so this is a darker colour, this is just the steel. Okay, now their colours, to be honest, they tend to be all or bloody nothing. You know, that is the trouble with them. Alright, so in some ways you can sort of get a colour like this and it works quite well. I'll just get a fresh towel. Just move those. Okay. But they are quite close together, alright? So, if we just put this down. Let me just drag this over here. There we go. Alright, so what we're going to do is just going to put in some little post shading lines. Okay, just in amongst this. Just using that darker hue, just to put in a little bit of weathering. You know, and again, disclaimer, it's extremely hot in here. Okay. Just like so. Hopefully you can see those just like that. So we're just popping in a little bit of post shading down into here. And then again, what we'll do is I'm just going to put a little bit of this down the back end, just so you can see a sort of difference in colour. I'll do this back part to about here. Okay, and as you can see, I must admit we've torn off a bit down the back here, but we won't worry about that. But we're going to show this colour going down over here. And we're going to try and cover that. And this is the versatility of this paint, because to be honest, to cover that with Alclad, it would just never happen. But this stuff's actually pretty good. I'm not saying it's the do everything jack of all trades type of paint, but from a metal it's pretty damn close, because look, we've actually hidden that in there, and that was torn paint. So in theory, if it is Alclad, it would never have covered that whatsoever. Okay. Again, we're just going to on that side. I'm just going to put a little bit more on there. And again, it doesn't mind the high air pressure. I'm not saying that that tear in the tail was perfect, but as you can see, it has lost it now. Okay, so that's those done like that. I'm just trying to figure out where I can and can't handle this. Unfortunately, we have sprayed our wings, what we were saying about. I knew I should have covered it. Okay, but that is down in there like that. Okay, then if you want to take slightly different shades and hues of colour, again we're going to take the titanium, and you can see with theirs it's got a nice thing down the bottom there of all that sort of gold rust colour, which is what gives that titanium that funny sort of hue. Okay, which again you can see how much this takes to shake to break this up. Just starting to go now, you can just see it there starting to break. So we just get some of this to go. Ooh. Okay, so just blow that out of the way. Again, pretty hot in here, mop of brow. Oh. Okay, so okay, where can we touch this wing? I can't remember which ones we've done and which ones we haven't now. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to come in with this colour, and we're going to do a little bit of post work just around this. We're going to do it all freehand. Okay, so again, air pressure, you probably hear it's way too high. Bang that back. because we're only going to need a little bit, so we want a little bit of air for doing a little bit of run work, okay, and everything else. So again, we're just going to pop in a little bit on that rudder. I'm going to just put in a little bit on that tail, a bit too much. Okay, and what we're going to do, we're just going to pick out little panels, and we're just going to try and break this up just a little bit. And again, we're just going to pop it round everywhere. And again, we're just going to do the nose. This colour. Just so we can get in there quite nice and tight. Just easing it back. And then just down on this side. Look at that side we did. Okay, just a little bit of post. So again, we're just popping up. Yeah, it's just that thing of being quite subtle with it. And then just down on here, we're just going to run it around. Just in these wheel wells, just going to darken them off a little bit. Okay, just those centres. So what I'm doing here is just picking out panels, just to break it all up, just a little bit. Okay, and there we go. That's it all done down on there like that. Okay, pretty nice. And again, don't forget, we're trying to do basics here. We're not trying to, you know, push the limit or whatever we're trying to do. It is literally just to try and get us a metal finish to go down and show the differences and different ways of doing it. Yes, there's a million and one different weathering techniques, but you can see I've just run around it with a little bit of post shading just to break up that sort of metal finish, and had no real problems with it at all. So if you did want to, and this is where it's going to show up our awful overspray and everything now, but in theory, which is something we can have a go at a minute with a new wonderful product which is coming to the streets near you soon, if we can get it to do it. Okay, if we just unmask this guy. My hands, it's all stuck. And there we go. Again, try not to overcomplicate in anything here. This is the thing. I don't want to go into a situation where you start talking about 20 different techniques for doing the same thing. I'm just trying to show the basics of it going in to give a sort of metal finish and all those types of things. There's a couple of things we can do to this which we'll show you in a moment as this begins to dry, but as you can see it's all in there, done. And depending on what type of finish you want and what type of effect you're going for, do you want it to be sort of more used metalled, or do you want it to be sort of show finish and everything else like that? That is going to depend on your surface. Don't forget, all of this technically was done over a flat surface, so it wasn't actually done, but you can still get one hell of a shine to it all. And if you were to polish this up a little bit, you would get even more. And then obviously if you go down in there and you can actually then tidy it all up and things like that, you can go step after step after step. Okay, so no problem with those at all. Okay, Yeah, you can micro mesh, or you could use these other great products that are available, which will be these. Okay, the new Flory Models sanders and various things. Comes in various thicknesses, but actually what you can do is obviously just sand these down, which will. These aren't designed for sanding per se. These are designed for doing this type of work exactly. They're designed to weather paintwork down. Okay, you can use them obviously for doing it, but you can see they are that usual thing with us. They do self-clean. But if we just sand this guy down here, you can see we're taking it off of this wing. And the other thing as well, if you was to sand this model first before we come along with the metal coat, we would have done a very nice job cleaning it all up. Okay, so I'm just going to rub this slightly around everywhere. But to be honest, these are designed to do what this is doing, where it's actually not cutting through the paint. It's designing to give you a perfect little finish to it and everything else like that. Okay. Okay. So under here, you can do that same type of thing to this. If we just pick an area, I'm trying to find somewhere that's a little bit dry, like here. We're going to use one of these. We're going to use the white side, and we're just going to lightly buff this, and it should, in theory, just take the edge off and just make it a little bit more shiny, highly polished. But again, you're not going to cut through your paintwork. And again, very nice, nice and smooth. And everything else we just do up here. Bragging rights for the new product. There we go. Just like that. And again, as you say, taking off your spray levels and your various things. Let's just give this a bit more of a general, just to mirror some of this in. You can actually, like here, if we wear through, you should be able to go through paint layers without going through to plastic. Like we can see down in here, we're wearing through the actual layers of those other ones we put on there now to do your weathering and all your stuff. There we go. So there we go. That is basic metallics. And again, the bit at the back which had the tear in it, if I can try and show you it, it's there still, just buried very nicely in there as well. Yep, Skinny Polisher. This is the new one that's going to be coming along. As I say, it'll be with you this time next week. Hopefully they'll all be here and ready to go. As I say, it does come as a normal, which is our normal one, and it's going to come as a 60mm sheet as well. Again, double-sided. So you've got the white polish side and you've got the actual very micro polish. So yeah, that's your three flavours. It will be like that. And again, although these things won't last forever like the other ones do, they do self-clean as well, so you should be able to sort of clean them up as you go with them, as you make your way through. But again, it'll be available as a set. So what you're going to do is get one full set. You're going to get 2 of these, okay, and then you're going to get 4 of the little skinnies in one little set. And then obviously you can buy 2 sheets if you want to, or you can buy a pack of 3 of the actual sticks like this, or you can buy a pack of 10 skinnies, depending on which way you want to do it. But there we go. That is about it. Simple. Piece of cake. Can't see what the problem is. Why does everyone worry about metallic coats? Okay, any questions? Shout them out now. Whew, I need a drink. Desperately. Mop my brow. I've lost my thermostat. I can't see it. It's behind the monitor now. I've had to move it around. Okay. How do you repair metallics micromesh? Yeah, absolutely, like we showed there. If you got them, you can just lightly sand it off. You'll be absolutely fine with those ones. Or just go back over it with your original colours. It doesn't take a lot to coat it over, and you can get with them like that. Let me just pop down into the airbrushing tutorial page. I think don't know if you've got any question there. Brian says, hi Phil, just a word of caution. I've used the genetic reamer for the H&S in the 0.2 nozzle and it ripped the end to bits. Okay. And had to replace it. I bought the current H&S reamer and what a difference. I know everyone can't afford, sorry, hold on, did you say, hold on, I bought a generic reamer, sorry, got you, that makes sense. I was going to say, the thing is, the reamers are tapered, so you can't push them all too far in, they won't physically go any further than they can in there, but generic reamer, got you, absolutely. Yeah, if you do buy generic parts, I'm a great believer in, if you've got, especially an airbrush, it's quite an expensive bit of kit, you know, this one here is like, what, 180 quid now, whatever it is, but, which one is it? This one. This one here is over 10 years old now. It's never failed me, I've never had a problem with it. And okay, it's a little bit like Trigger's broom. British guys will know what I mean by that. But from a personal point of view, all the externals, apart from needle and nozzle, are all original. I've never had to replace anything from it. And to be honest, I've put in the order for the Mac valve, the twisty one that goes in the bottom, so I do like the idea of that. And I have put in an order at the same time for a new needle and nozzle. I don't need them, but I used my backup one recently in my AL because I bent my needle, I think. So that's what I did with that one. But if you're going to go out and you're going to buy generic sort of cleaners and stuff, the one thing I don't like either, and I see a lot of guys using, which is a word of caution, is Iwata will send you, or Iwata will sell you a very nice set of these, okay? The trouble with it is if you go poking that down your actual, well, anything really, your actual airbrush or your nozzle, one, your nozzle, you're just going to splay the end open because it's going to go down there and kill your nozzle. Secondly, you're scratching off the coating that they put on these airbrushes because they're sharp on the end. Yeah, if you use the real one for it, which as we know is this little guy here, it's actually not going to scrape off the end because they're actually rounded off at the end because they're the way they bend them together, I suppose. And also the actual bristles hang further forward. But the big thing is it's designed, the size of it is designed to fit inside the airbrush. So at no point are you overdoing it or overstretching it or anything else like that. And I think that's important. And when you think like one of these, okay, again, this is, I don't know, say it's a £5, but I've had it since I've had my airbrush and I'm still using it to this day and it's still working absolutely fine. But I do know you can buy generic ones off of eBay and they're a lot cheaper, but they can come back and bite you. And it only takes something like that and you push it a little bit hard or a little bit wrong or something else like that, and it's a really bad day. It's going to cause you no end of troubles and things like that. So just be mindful when you're doing those types of things. Phil, sometimes I get runs in metal coats with non-metallic paints. It's easy to deal with, but with metallics it nearly always leaves a mark. Again, it's that thing, it's flooding it. If you flood the surface, it's difficult to get rid of that sand texture, as I call it, back in there, because it's where all the pigments, the flecky bits, are sticking upright and at 45 degrees instead of laying flat. Okay, if you can get them to lay flat, that is a lot of your troubles and be, you know, sorted out, things like that. If you do, let it dry completely. All right, give it a very light sand with a polishing type or something else like that. You don't want to be sanding it off, okay? Just flatten it out, okay? And then very light dusty coats, just bring it back very, very slowly, okay? But don't over wet it. As soon as you make this stuff too wet and flood it, that's when it all dries in the wrong positions and everything else like that. But again, like we said, from spraying primer right the way through to spraying paint and everything else, listen to your airbrush. You want to be hearing it, so when you pull the trigger, you can hear an audible difference, but it's the same if it makes sense. Okay, so that perhaps the pitch just goes a little bit deeper, but you don't hear things like crackling. You don't hear it suddenly disappearing, as in it's struggling and stuff like that. If you've got spitting, crackling sounds or anything else like that, something is majorly wrong. You need to up your air pressure, thin your paint, it's having trouble atomize it. But when you pull the trigger, there should be hardly any difference in tone to actually when it's just air running through it and then the paint's being introduced. Okay, so from that point of view, when you're doing any type of metallics, it's exactly the same. Light, build it up, bring it back, and you can disguise pretty much anything with it. Will the new sanders be included in the large sander set you carry? To be honest, I don't know yet because we'd have to redo the packaging and then the price will go up because it will be an extra set. What we might do is put in the multi-pack set in with it, because at the moment, don't forget, you basically get a pack of everything as individuals. So if we put individuals in there, you'd have to get 2 sheets, then you would get 3 of those, and then you'd obviously get 10 skinnies in there, so that's another 3, it's 15 quid, so it makes the price go up by £15. Obviously you guys get a discount, so I'm not sure about that. I will have to speak to the boss and see what she says and whatever she wants to go with that one. Jean says, or Jan says I should say, hope the polishing surfaces are no longer the blue sponge. Had some trouble with that one of mine, but excited to try the new one. No, these are totally different. These aren't the blue ones. I love the blue one. I don't know why everyone hates it. I'd get on really well with it. These are, do you remember these old ones? This is one of the old ones we used to do. These are the Chinese cheap, they're about 7p each if you want to go out and buy them. They do them. It's not the same. Our grit is different. They physically, I can show you the difference on camera. We are not the same as the cheap Chinese knockoff ones. As you can see, ours is actually a different texture and grit to it, but it's damn near as close as I can get it. And also the other thing as well, you might see on this one, it's wearing off. These only last like 1 usage. These hopefully will last you a little bit longer. They're not going to be as durable as these guys. These guys, like, I've had this one for years, but hopefully it'll last you a lot longer than the old ones did, because that was always my big bugbear with the old ones. It just didn't last. They used to fall apart within 1 use, so I didn't like them. So that's the thing with that one. Metallics demystified, thank you very much, no problem Robbie. Do you apply decals directly to natural metal finishes, or do you use a clear coat? If I can get away with it, I will go straight in. If you have a look at when we did the F-104 Starfighter, I think I just went straight in, and I think I did it on the MiG as well, if I'm honest. Again, I don't like to overcoat it if I don't have to, because I think it changes that metal luster of the actual paint and stuff like that. From my point of view, I prefer to do it more on the merits of its own thing. The other thing as well is that because it's such a beautiful clean surface and such a polished surface, being the natural metal look, that decal goes down really easy with no use of sort of hardeners or setters or anything else. It goes on, and then that way the carrier film beds in very nicely as well, so you can hardly see any carrier film around it. So again, if I can get away without it, I won't. Okay, if you know you want to do heavy weathering, something else like that afterwards, then perhaps you do want to get it down there. Or if you've got a decal that's particularly going over a concurved surface, or something with like raised detail, and you know it's going to be a problem going down there, and you know you're going to need setting solutions, stuff like that, then yeah, probably better to give it a clear coat of something to go down on there. Clear coat to go down onto it, to be honest, there is specialist ones on the market you can buy, which is something we're talking about next week, everybody. That's why I don't want to get too much involved in this. Okay, but this is the Model Master sealer for metallizer. I think it's probably one of the best ones out there. It's very little change in it when you overspray it. It tends to keep it pretty much as good. That said as well, the Goozy, is it the Goozy stuff or the other one? What's it called? I don't know which one it is now. The Goozy or the... I don't know, I can't remember which one it is now. That's the canopy dipping one, so it must be this one. The Goozy agent works exceptionally well as well. That's really nice stuff for going over a clear coating for metallics, because again, there's no visible difference. I think the trouble is if you use clears and stuff like that, especially the old one, because it was quite thick, you get the magnifying effect, and it looks like you can see all the pigment a lot clearer. With this, it's very, very thin, this stuff, so when it goes on, you put it on very thin, and it dries quite rapidly, and it gives a nice solid finish to the actual paintwork, and it will protect it at the same time. So it's good for handling, decaling, weathering, and everything else like that. Steve says, Phil, would you paint squadron colour on a P51 and then the metal coat colour, or do the metal colour first? I would. The trouble is, again, you're doing this thing about masking it. You have to be very, very careful. But I think, in all honesty, for ease, I would probably do the actual metal finish, then I'd put the markings on afterwards and paint those on. Just be careful and just de-tack all the time. Make sure that your tack on your actual tape has barely got enough to stick in there. Okay, you want it to be really, really low tack. Don't use the cheap stuff. Keep with the Kabui tape, whatever they call it, or Tamiya tape. They're the better ones for it. And when you peel, don't do, because you know it's a bit like taking labels off of jars. If you do it nice and steady and you just go along very nicely, you get minimal tear or lift with your actual decals. If you're quite quick with it, then you're just going to rip it off, and it's not really a fair shout of the product. Okay, Jan says, I feel like a giant pack of sanders is more a first time buy. I try everything, then you buy one set for when it runs out. Well, the thing is, with our big jumbo set, I think most people never buy another sander again. They tend to go on forever by doing 10s in packs and everything else. We have thought about, which I can throw open now, tell me what you think, is doing a starter test pack where you get one of everything in it. So you get one skinny of all the different ones, because at the moment we do a multi-pack one which can have two, which obviously the skinny polishy new one will go into that set. Yeah, we did think about just doing so it's got one of things instead of giant pack of like gets 3 of everything or 10 of everything and stuff like that. So we just have to see how that one goes. And the blue polisher, I had trouble because the surface is kind of fragile. I had a bit of water on the blue coat melted. Okay, this is where obviously it's my fault, I don't explain it enough. The coat on the top here is actually impregnated with a polishing compound. So see it like T-cut. It's designed to go wet. You're supposed to wet it and then you rub the surface and it will release the compound which aids in polishing. That's the thing to it, okay? So that's the reason why it is. Technically you should dunk it in water, polish the rubbish out of whatever you're doing, aircraft, plastics and stuff, and it releases it. Then you switch to the white side and polish it to hell, okay? And that's how it works. But you could, that's why you say you can use them wet or dry. But that stuff it's releasing, it's supposed to release. It's an inbreded, this is, you might notice the difference between this and other sanders. This is actually material. So the polishing compound is already impregnated into the polishing compound. So when you wet it, it releases it. You can feel it's like a pumice, and then you polish with it, and that's what it's doing. So in some ways, that's my fault. I should have explained it better. But yeah, it's supposed to do it. It's part of the giant polishing thing. One of these things, again, if you want to test it on something, if you do it on a big object, I mean like car headlights, you know, when they go cloudy and foggy, wet one of these in a bucket of water and then just go over it. You'll be amazed what this one can do. As I say, Liam, my lad's one, his have gone, and I do it to his every couple of months. And that's what it is. So it is designed for it in some ways. Phil, just come online, what are these new sanders for? Basically they are for anything you want to be, like all sanders, but so we've been speaking about these ones on the live show. I'm using these guys all as guinea pigs, but these are our new polishers, okay? Again, they are available in 3 flavours. You can have it as a sheet. They're both double-sided and they're cord as well, but these are a lot thinner, so they're designed not to roll up on each other. So they're with a 3mm. 1mm core, 3mm in total diameter, but as I say, it's available as a stick, and as I say, they're both double-sided. But if you wanted to do it for any type of polishing, for everybody who love the old-fashioned Chinese green and white ones, they're my version of that, if you like, and stuff like that. But again, they should be all in stock by next week, and then don't forget, you guys as members, you'll get first dibs on this way before anybody else and the general public even knows about it. We haven't even made an announcement out to the world trade or anything about these yet. You guys will get first dibs, so we don't run out or anything else like that. So, although I don't think we're ever going to run out, we've got literally hundreds of thousands coming on the way. Right, one might not be enough, might do 2 or 3. I use 2 skiddies for a single blade. Brilliant. Okay. Otherwise, no idea. Then I do 132 scale. That's the thing. If you're doing the bigger scales, I know what you mean. If you're doing the small stuff, it's not so bad. So that is about it. If we're done for questions, let me just check in the main forum. And we are all good in there. That's all fine. We're all good in there. Tomorrow, you're not going to want to miss my review of the Argosy. To say it's a kit. Matt's going to love it. This was Matt's kit. To be honest, is he in tonight? Is he actually in here? Where is Matt? No, he's not in here tonight. He's obviously got far better things to do. But I know the other one is Mr. Buller, John Buller. That's his AN12. So thank you very much, John, for letting me review that. You're going to love the review on that one as well. So yeah, they are what I would call not shake and bake kits. They're going to take a little bit of work, but they be a lot of fun. But the Argosy will be up with you tomorrow, and I'll put the AN12 up on Monday. That'll be up there, as well as the next parts on the actual ME262 and everything else like that will get up there as well. I was going to say, are you built? No, I'm not. I'll tell you who is though, Andy. That's Matt's. Matt, for some reason, he's gone mad and he's bought one. To say, I think that you need gloves to handle the sprue. It is that rough. It's like handling a thorn bush. It's got so much flash and bits on it and all the rest of it. But anyway, just one thing. What's that, Paul? Say again. Angle grinder for Andy. Definitely. What's the difference between the blue polisher and the new ones? Right, the old polisher, as we affectionately now know it as Mark III, a lot of people didn't like it, and as I say, I don't know why. I really like it. I have no problem with it. I love the white side. It's equally as good as the blue side, and as I said, it's got the release agent, and these last for literally ever. They never seem to wear out, which is the great thing about them. And the reason why I switched away from the Chinese knockoff ones, because these things, they fall apart within one use, okay? And it used to bug me. And as I say, from a sales point of view, brilliant. Actually, from a modelling point of view, it bothered me. So that's why I stopped those and we moved over to something that was far more durable, which are these things, okay? But everybody keeps asking for them, including Hans, and Hans is, you know, he does like to get his point over sometimes, so he's bugging me for the last couple of years to do it again. So when I spoke to our manufacturer who makes all these for us, I said to them about it, and they can obviously get the Chinese knockoff one in big stuff and all the rest of it, no problem at all. But as I said, it just falls apart. So we've come up with a new type. So these are very thin. The big difference is, if I show you a new and old, okay, as we got down in here, the big thing is, you can probably see the thickness. These are like a big nail sponge versus our ones, which are 3mm thick cord, okay, but the idea is they're thinner, so you can bend these, as you can see, and they don't ruck up. You know, the old ones used to get, you get like, it builds up. Okay, the new ones, we don't get any of that at all. So these are really flexible and everything else, and these are designed really for getting in really tight little spaces on 1/72 stuff and all the rest of it, and you can actually just get in there and sand into wherever you want. But basically these will polish and they'll micro sand. This stuff is like micro mesh. So if you didn't see it a minute ago, I just sanded through to show you I can go through paint layers without any real problem. Okay, so if I just show you over here on this one, you can see we've got a little bit of silver there, so we can just lightly sand this and we can take that out, because we can go through layers of paint. I just work my way along this wing and get rid of it all, but also you can then come in and you can take out paint layers. So what colour did we have under here? I can't remember. So if we go down through the layers, we should, getting a bit polishy in there, but we've gone through now to a different shade of green. I don't know if you can see that, but obviously we've got different shades of green down in there. Okay, and then if you keep going, you can go through individual paint layers. So we're just approaching the next layer, and you can do it with pretty much ease. You don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, so with these ones, you know why we've been playing with this new idea. Okay, you see we've got grey coming through there now. So we're actually going through all of these right the way through. There we go, into the grey underneath, without going through into the plastic. Now if I'd done that with any other sander, we would have just gone straight through. You can see it over here. We went through to the brown, through there. We've gone through 2 shades of green. We've gone into the brown now, and then obviously we'd keep going down right the way through. The whole point of these, to be honest, you can use the white side then, and we can polish. So if we wanted to, we can turn this into a gloss. And when we say a gloss, I mean the glossiest glossy thing that you've ever seen. There we go, if you can catch that in the light. Look at that, okay? So this will take any paint whatsoever, and I can go through layers individually, or if I want to, I can polish everything to an absolute mirror, okay? And that is the point to these. You know me, I've been playing with this sort of idea, and I started it properly on the A10. Instead of using flat satin and glosses, of polishing the surface, that way you get more of a thing. This was also my thing to this. I wanted something like a micro mesh that could go through different layers, and if we wanted to, we can switch over to the white side and we can go through and physically polish everything without the need of glosses and various things. So yeah, that's the whole point to it. But it's really nice, it's very, very simple to use, and it's durable, which is obviously the big thing as well. I want something for you guys which you can then buy a pack of and it's going to last you. I don't want something like the old ones, this thing, you use it once and have to throw it away, because to me that's just a con and a rip-off and everything else. And alright, they were dirt cheap, but you know, it's not the point. At the end of the day, you need a material and a product that works every single time. So that was the thing to those. Right, my wife loves the blue polisher. It buffs her nails up like glass. You're not the only one, to be honest. Mel does the same with them. Right, okay, Phil, I missed the start. What was the make of paint you were using? For the life of me, I can't remember. So the first paint we used tonight was the actual Vallejo metal colours. Again, if you're an acrylic painter, this is where you want to be, okay? This stuff is absolutely beautiful. Downsides to it is if you try and hand paint it, not so, because it's really thin. So what you need to do is flood it. So when you're putting it down, just put quite a bit on your brush and don't try and brush it on, just layer it across. It will self-level and it looks beautiful. Airbrushing, no problem at all with it. You're never going to get chrome out of this. You're never going to get polished aluminium effect and all the rest of it, but you can pretty much get everybody else's from it. And then we just moved over to the AK Extremes on the other side of things, and we're just showing it. Again, with this, I wasn't trying to show you doing chrome and polished metals. We were just showing how to put down a metallic coat onto your model with ease, with no runs and spitting and grittiness and all things like that in there, just to give you a sort of worn metal look to your model, okay, without actually any problems. The whole point of these is more of a basic thing. Later on we can go through chromes if you want, and we can do various polished metal effects and heated effects, which I'd like to do. I quite like working, because I have got things like hot blue, hot reds and all those different colours for giving that sort of nice sort of burnt metal look where you get the blues coming through and all things like that. So we can do a lot of that later on. What about Mr. Colour Metallics Fill? Yeah, I use them, absolutely. I think they're great, no problem at all. I don't think they're specifically designed for airbrushing in that particular way and give a beautiful metal effect. They tend to be more of a generic colour, a bit like Tamiya's doing everything else. If you're using the buffable ones, that's totally different ball game, as we've spoken about before, and totally different, because again, you can airbrush that down and then polish the hell out of it. So, you know, we did that to this guy, don't forget. This is buffables, and we tried to do this one with different weathering effects, and we'll catch you in the light if it's going to show through, but really happy. This is one of those ones where you just can't see it sat there, but when you come in here and you can see the different sort of, you know, weathered look to it and everything else that we actually got on this one, it worked extremely well. So when we did Blondie, it was just that thing of saying, right, we're going to come in, we're going to put them down, then we're going to buff them in there. Again, we were never looking for chrome. We don't want chrome. To me, this is a warbird. It was operational. If we were doing a show bird, then maybe you want to make it a bit more chromified, but from my point of view, I wasn't after that type of effect. To be honest, I'm not a massive fan of chromey aircraft, but you know, they look nice, but from my point of view, I prefer the more worn metal look, so that's what we were going. We just wanted that normal aluminium effect right the way over the model. Sorry, you're all jumping around in here. Let me just try and go back. Where were we? Okay, Extreme Metals, talking about the Agassiz, Andy, Phil, sorry I said my wife, oh, did we lose something then? Something went horribly wrong then on the screen. Are we all okay? Okay, are we all alright? I've never had that appear before. I had a big thing on my screen saying it was in red writing. Okay, Chris says, hi Phil, new skinny polishers. That's it, it's what you just saw. That your demonstration could be cleaned off paint overspray, that you showed the removal of the paint layer. It might be suitable for this. Yeah, well, that's what I did. You can go through the whole point of these. Think of these like a micro mesh. If you like, it's a rip-off from micro mesh, although it's my version of it. little bit more beefy than micro mesh, but again, with one of these, when they're worn slightly, you can do different effects. What I would probably do is you have things like these, and as they wear in, you can do different things with them. When they're new, they're quite sharp, but these aren't. These are quite, you know, it's not like the blue one, where the blue one, when it's worn down, becomes a different type of polisher. These don't. They're still very, very nice, and you can just get in there, and as you say, I don't know if you can see it on there, but that's literally, it's like a mirror down in there. It looks beautiful and fine, but as you say, just depending. But my point to it is, I was just after a type of sander where I can then overspray. It's like a micro mesh, you can take out layers. From my point of view, what I wanted to do with it is that if you just give this a quick rub over your model, you're going to get quite a flat finish, and it's going to smooth out all the grittiness and stuff like that, but it's still going to be quite a flat finish. But if you go a little bit further, a little bit more polishing with it, then you're going to get more of a satin finish. But then if you flip it over to the white side, you're going to get gloss every time, okay? And you're going to have a gloss finish with it and make your way through. So from that point of view, you've just got it's more like a finishing polisher, I think we'll call it, because it gives you different type of finishes depending on how you use it. Right, you guys are all yapping in there. So Mr. Colours are good for small parts. Yes, absolutely. Mr. Colour paint's absolutely beautiful, no problem with that. Again, the great thing with Mr. Colour as well, you can hand paint with them. You know, it's really handy to have that one. And even if you're hand painting, say, I don't know, like a 2 square centimetre block or something, you can hand paint it and get a really nice effect with it. You don't have to then mask up and go round and everything else. So the Mr. Colour ones do it very, very well. Right, okay. Phil, anything you do with cleaning your airbrush? No, to be honest, with the AK stuff, I just put a little bit of lacquer thinner straight through it. In fact, I would do it now because I always forget, and I'll come down tomorrow morning and have a rock hard airbrush. Okay, so we'll just dump that. So just blow out your colour as you normally would. Okay. And then, because obviously it's a hot product, you just want to make sure you've got plenty of junk down underneath you. And then we're just going to come in. Where are we? Okay, just a little bit of lacquer thinners. And as we do all our cleanup, say I'm not one that it goes over, but just make sure you get right the way around the top of the colour cup. Okay, everything down there. The great thing with lacquer thinners, you can see it just destroys everything down in there. It's never a problem. Okay, just a good old mix. Make sure you clean it right down where the area is got the chamber for sort of the needle going through. Little brush on the tip, that just gets rid of any build up that might have built up around the end, and then tip it. Again, I always tip it because you get any crispy bits around the top, you don't want them going down the bottom. Okay, so then we're just going to pop another little bit in, not tons of it, alright, and then from there you can then start blowing it through. So it's still a low air pressure. And then what we'll do, we'll just turn up the air pressure a little bit just to get this done quicker. But you can see we've got dirty thinners coming through, but we'll wait for that last puff because you might see it floats on the top down in the colour cup, and then when you blow it through, that last bit, as you don't know if you can see it just down in here, you get that little darker patch. So that's fine, and then what we're going to do, just again put another tiny bit in there, only a couple of drops really, and then we're just going to blow through, pumping the trigger, and what we're just looking for up here is anything that's coming out. Okay, you shouldn't have any colour, especially that last drop, that little last puff that it does, you just want it to be clear. Okay, so there we go, and we've got nothing in there at all, so we know that is all clean. And then what I tend to do is at that point, with what I've just sprayed over this, I'll just pop round the body, give it all a rub, and we've got an airbrush looking like new. Just like that, and good to go again. Now if you wanted to, this is, to be honest, my I don't have the tape, so I use this exclusively for all the hot paint. So it's MRPs, any type of ones, enamels, things like that, so the extreme metals go in here, all of those things go purely through this airbrush. The one with the tape on it is my acrylic airbrush, so anything goes, the acrylic-y wise goes through that one. What you could do, if you're using a dual action brush, i.e. using a brush for both types of paints, acrylic and enamels or lacquers, is just put a bit of acrylic airbrush cleaner just through there. But because I'm not, and this is just purely for that one airbrush, then I'm literally quite happy to leave it as is, and it can sit like that now, and it will go back over there, and we're good to go. And then this one down in here, to be honest, if you wanted to, you could come along, put a little bit of lacquers in here just to make sure you're clean, rinse and repeat. Okay, so we're just going to pop this down in here, and obviously this was those, you know, Vallejo's in here, but this will be enough to get rid of those last little bits. And if you were doing it, exactly the same thing again. So we're just going to clean that around the neck, and as I say, you can use the cloth because it'll be impregnated with all that, just to get all the nasties off, and off around the body. Just be careful of the needle, don't rip it across the needle. Okay, quick pinch clean. But then for this, what I would do differently is obviously we'll grab a little bit of airbrush cleaner. This is acrylic airbrush cleaner, and again we'll just put that through. We're just going to run it round, and then we're just going to blow all this through, just down in here. And again, nothing coughed out with that last brush fall, and then that one's good to go as well, so we don't have any problem with that. Alrighty, so there we go. Any more questions, or can I go now because it's really hot in here? Okay. Sorry, you're all up here again, are you? Are you yapping amongst yourselves? Yeah, that's all good. Okay. Right, there we go. Well, if that is it then, am I off the hook? Can I go now? Oh, so there we go. Simple, easy, don't overcomplicate it. Always have that thing. If your airbrush is coughing, if it's not working well, if it's spitting, dump the colour cut. Don't fight it. Don't try and come back from it. It is literally not worth the hassle. And then literally you can just go through it and you can end up with something pretty nice, no problem at all. Again, as I say, this is just the basics. We'll see how things go. But if you wanted to do more chrome effect, you've got to get that gloss coat down first. Don't forget. Black as well, because it will just reflect the colour. Then you can come in and you can use different techniques and different ways of spraying it. Again, if you're going to be using chromes, polished metals, gloss black, mirror-like finish and light dusty coats, and just bring it up. Okay, don't over flood it, don't get it too wet, just very nice and light as it comes up, and you end up with a beautiful finish. Then you can seal it and you can polish it and do all the things to it if you wanted to, just like that. But from this point of view, this is literally just laying down metal finishes just to have a metal look to it in different ways of breaking it up and showing it and everything else like that. So from their point of view, it worked perfectly for what we needed for tonight. I use, this is Jan saying, I use leveling thinners for acrylics, enamels, lacquer cleaning, never had a problem. You can, it's fine. The only thing is just be careful when you're using lacquers in certain acrylics, because what happens is the acrylic combines, the molecule will go funny, it turns to gum. But you can obviously keep adding thinners to it, but you'll need a lot of thinners to make it sort of into a liquid again and to flow out your airbrush to cleaning it. So in some ways what I do recommend is if you're using acrylics, clean it with acrylics first, then go in with lacquers afterwards, so you've got most of it out of the way, and in that way you can just get rid of those crispy bits that perhaps build up around the nozzle, things like that, on the inside of the nozzle and around the needle. It will clean them out and you can go through. But don't just put acrylics in your airbrush and then come along with lacquers on top of it, because it will make it go like toffee. Okay, so get all of it out first, then do it, and you'll be absolutely fine with it. Phil, please do the Trumpy MiG-29 giant build. Spoiler alert, I really like that kit. And to be honest, it's one of those things, it's winking at me over there, and it's one of those kits which it's a big box, it's a huge box. And it's just the wrong type, if I'm honest. I would love to do it. If I was going to do a MiG-29, I just wouldn't do that version. I'd do the SMT or something else like that, which they are coming out with. But honestly, I reviewed that today, and it is a beautiful kit. It really is nice. It's one of those kits where it's typical trumpeter. It's big, it's brash, it's weapons, it's all those things in there. It's got some nice touches with it as well. But I'm looking at it thinking straight out of the box, that'd be a beautiful build. I could see myself doing that really, really nicely. So yes. Don't know. When I do the MiG, do the F-16, that will be the turning point, because if the F-16 goes really well and it's big and I've got somewhere to put it, that's when I'm going to be looking at doing that guy as doing it. And I must admit, I've even thought about doing that in flight, so I've got somewhere to put it as well, because it can go with my Typhoon and my Tomcat and the other things. So never say never on that one. Right, okay, so if we are all done tonight, I'm off. I'm going to leave you all in here to talk about your age. I'm glad I'm only 44. I feel young. Or youngish, and it's great to see so many in you here tonight, so thank you very much too. I'm going to read you all out now because you're all here. We've got Alex, Andrew, Archie, Craig, Daniel, Jason, Jean, Jerome, Matt, Paul, Philip. Oh no, he spells it wrong, he's got 2 L's. Renee, Trevor, Andy, Jim, Landon, Ludwig, Neil, Robbie, Simon, Sean. Is he gone? He has, isn't he? Sorry, a certain person's gone. I'll have a word with him and know where he's actually gone as well. Mr. Buller's escaped. I know you won't mind. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure, even though I am sweating. At least the sun's gone down at last. I might get a bit of a cool bit of breathe through here. So I can feel summer's next big build. Yeah, would be nice, wouldn't it? I don't know. How many hands up who would love me to see to do a giant MiG-29? It is nice. No problem, guys. Thank you very much at all. No, this year, don't forget, don't panic, the Mosquitoes this year. I'm going to be doing the F-16 and the Mosquito are going to be straightforward back-to-back builds. The Mosquito is my big one for this year. That's going to be, to be honest, I've done lots of big ones this year, but it's going to be my big project for the year. As you know, every year I do one huge one. That's going to be the Mozzie with everything fully loaded to it. So yes, but it's definitely coming along. So yes, Mozzie, somebody asked me the other day, I'm hoping to get the F-16. I've built, to be honest, quite a few F-16s for commissions over the years. I know the kit quite well. It goes together really, really quickly. It's pretty much flawless going together. If anybody's ever built the 1/48th one, just think it's the 1/48th one, but bigger, and you'll be just there with it. Just depends if I get bogged down with details for it, or we just get straight on with a great build. So I'm hoping to keep it a straightforward big build, and we'll just get it in and out within 2 months, and then we're going to get pushing on with the Mozzie, because I want the Mozzie to technically be started and be well into it by September, because I want to take it to Telford with me, you see. So I've got to get it done, and obviously you think in September, I've only got 2 months then to the run up till Telford, so I want it to come to Telford, so that's the plan with that one. MiG-21 in 30 seconds. Yeah, that's another good one. I'd love to do that one. We could do that one. The YF-23 is going to make an appearance at some point this year. I promise you that. I'm going to do it as a quick build, because let's face it, it's only like 2 halves go together. But again, paintwork and things like that, I've got ideas for it. But it's over there. That's winking at me as well. And as you, when I got rid of my stash, I sold a lot of his. Everything you see here is actually going to get built now. That's my goal, is to work through these and get those sorted out. So if you see it, it's going to get done. Right, I'm going now. Thank you very much, everybody. Look, there's more of you all calling in. You're all an hour late, a couple of hours late. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. Thank you for all your kind comments and questions. It's great to have you here. It's what makes all of this part of what we do. Next week, I don't know if we will be here thinking about it, because obviously we are at RIAT the day after, and I'll probably get a lot of things ready. But if I am, we're going to be talking top coats. If not, I have to postpone it a week back. We'll see how things go as we make our way through, getting a little bit closer. But there we go. Tonight was natural metal finishes. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, join me again in another couple of weeks, and we'll be talking about finishes, clear coats, and satin, glosses, frosting, and all things like that. So till later, everybody. Happy modelling. Take care.